Okay, welcome to the Blade Enterprise Resource Planning Platform. Now, as we all know, Blade is a cloud-enabled ERP platform that allows us to perform various functionalities from payroll, personnel, organizational planning, recruitment, performance management, time management, you name it. A very robust, fully featured platform. So let's quickly dive into the application. To log in, we'll be using the default account. The username is 0, while the password is password in lowercase. Press enter. Now this takes us to the default workspace. Now the workspace might look a bit overwhelming, but you will find out that it's very straightforward, and it can also be customized, so you can actually customize what comes up based on the user profile. So you might want to be able to restrict access to various functionalities, or say for example you just want the users to be able to access the self-service or some other transactions. You can actually configure them from within the system. But let's just quickly go through very quickly through the workspace and then get a feel of what the flow and the sequence looks like. So over here we have the logo, the Blade logo, which is the product logo, and then we have also the information about the currently logged in user, so you can see the current user, the time the session started, and then the client. The client is very important when you are in a cloud system. As you know, the Blade can either be deployed on the cloud or on-premise. So for the on-premise, it really isn't a problem, but when you're on the cloud, this actually identifies the account to which this login is tied. So now on your right, you can see the detail of the currently logged in person, and there is a delegation functionality here. So if for example a staff is on leave or is absent from work or is not around for a few days, the staff can actually delegate his functions or his responsibilities to another person, and then that person automatically assumes that responsibility, and when the person logs in, he's able to log in as that staff and then perform the same functions that that staff would have ordinarily been able to perform. So if you look at it right now, I have a few delegations. I can select to operate as this particular user, and then automatically the system profile would adapt to reflect this user. Now moving on, we can see the session details. If I click on this, now this essentially shows us the details of the session. Remember, when I logged into the application, the system created a session specifically for my account for the duration of my transaction with it, and in this session it has captured all the details that I would need to be able to operate seamlessly within the application. As you can see, they can be modified. So if for example, a simple example is if I needed to change the date format, I could just click on this button here and then select one of the available date options, and then what will happen is that across the entire system, all the date references will now be formatted appropriately in this format. So wherever a date is being displayed, it will be displayed in the format I have specified here. Now this will be specific to my session. In other words, once I log out of this session and someone else logs in, his own defaults takes into effect. And even if I log out and log in, I'll go back to the default, and I will need to come back here and then reset them if I need to do something specific. If I need to make it more permanent, then I'll have to go to the user defaults itself to actually set them up there. Same thing happens for the decimal format, as well as many of the other options here. This is the list of identities that have been attached to my account, and this is purely based on some of the modules that are configured in the system. So some of the modules will drive what comes up here, and the system uses information to carry out certain privilege roles and other functionality it provides. Now going on, we go to the roles. This is a role-based system. What do I mean by that? That the functionalities and the features and the securities around the system are tied to roles. And so When we create roles, we assign the security functionalities to them and then assign them to a user. And that determines what the user can do within the system. Same thing applies for the profiles. So right now we can see that I just have only one role assigned to me. The system can do a congregation or an aggregation of all the roles that have been assigned to me to determine my effective role. In other words, the role that I'm going to be logged in with at any point in time will be an aggregate of all the roles that have been assigned to me. Same thing applies for the profiles. Likewise, we have an organizational tab. The organizational tab allows us to restrict data access to certain functionalities in the system based on the organizational structure within the company or some other criteria that is used to create that data. And so we can restrict which department or which branch or which organization has access to view or to read or to get access to certain specific pieces of information based on what access he has here. Now the session shows me, so for the session in which I have here now, you can see that it captures my session detail. If I was logged in a different device, say maybe a mobile device, or from a different platform with the same account, they would all be listed here. Likewise, the parameters allows us to define custom parameters that are used within the system, and this can be used to set up some other functionalities. Okay, so moving on, we can now go. So this allows us to see if we have any email messages within the system. We can view them from here. Now this is a way of maybe generating a feedback within the system. You can use this to send a feedback message. Now likewise here we can view the system summary. This captures the details of the current installation. So once I open it, we can see the version of the application, the name of the application, the version. If it is cluster, the cluster means it's able to run on multiple hardware platforms simultaneously. And we can see the database, the current database installation, the version of the database. Likewise, if we move on, we can see the client detail, the details of the currently loading client, the client ID, the name, and if enhanced audit is enabled. Likewise, you can see the artifacts or the modules that have been enabled for this particular client. So whether you're on the cloud-based system or on the on-prem system, from here we can identify what modules are currently enabled or disabled within the application. Likewise, you can see the details of the license. You can see the expiry date when the license is active and the details of the license. And then we can do some updates, we can upload it, make a refresh, and do some other processes on the license. We can also see the details of the database. In other words, the underlying database that the application runs in. We can see what functionalities are on or off, and then either customize it accordingly or make some modifications, maybe from a database administrative point of view. Now likewise, we can see the plugins. Now the plugins are one of the unique features that Blade provides, and it allows us to enhance and expand the application indefinitely. So any functionality that we feel is missing or that we want to add to the application to enhance its functionality, we can implement that as a plugin. So right now, out of the box, there are a number of plugins that come with the system. So we have the biometrics plugin that is used to handle the biometrics requirements of the system. We have the cloud storage that allows us to integrate to a cloud provider. Right now it integrates to Amazon. We have the financial plugins. Now these plugins allow us to download or to load current exchange rates from various rate providers. So we integrate with most of the standard providers, but you can also create your own specific implementation and integrate them into the system, and they would be picked up immediately. Likewise, we have a messaging plugin that allows us to integrate with enterprise applications. Now we have the workforce. This is a Nigerian specific requirement. This is a Nigerian plugin, and what this plugin is used for, or what it does, is it allows us to automatically retire a personnel. So we can set that we want the system to automatically retire a personnel after 30 working years, or when the personnel becomes 65 years of age, and the system can automatically run this and then retire such a personnel once the requirements are met. Likewise, we have the reporting plugin that allows us to integrate to any kind of reporting platform. Likewise, we have the repository that allows us to integrate. So this is a big data integration that allows us to integrate with big data. So that is that for the plugin and generally for the features. Going forward, we can see now by the left, we can see the menus. These menus are basically the base of the functionality that are presented to us. So access to the various functionalities of the system will be done via this menu. Above the menu, we have a transaction code section, and what this allows us to do is to enter the various transaction codes. It's like a shortcut. Rather than having to navigate through a long list of menu options to look for a particular option we're looking for, if we just know the transaction code, we can use that as a shortcut to access that menu. So for example, we have just opened the maintain data of the personnel administration, and if you look at the bottom right of the screen, you can see the transaction code here. It tells us that the transaction code is PSN04. So rather than having to drill down through this whole path, I can just simply come to this screen here and then type in that code PSN04, and let me close this, and then just by pressing enter, I'm able to get to that same screen again. So that is like a shortcut to having to navigate through the functionalities or through the menus. And the same thing applies. So every menu page we open has a corresponding transaction code that can be used to access it immediately. We can open the self-service. This is the self-service that displays the functionality that we can use to display functionalities or to render specific functionality that we want the user to be able to perform. And we can customize it such that this is the startup option that comes when the user logs in, and he's able to perform these options based on what we allow them to do.